The Todd Shapiro Show. Canada Laughs, SiriusXM 168.
Lance Lambert's in the house, looking good. Look at him wearing a toque.
Dude, yeah. Funny story about that.
No, you said Paul Thompson's co-host, my man Paulie.
What's up, man?
Paulie.
Happy to be here.
My mother just was ranting and raving about Paulie Thompson.
You know,
yeah,
helping the at-risk youth of tomorrow. What can I do? You know what I mean?
You know, you hosted a charity event for my mom, and it was at-risk youth. And
I was there all weekend.
Yeah, all weekend.
Yeah.
And you killed. My mom said, you know what my mom said? She was like, I was a little worried at first.
Yeah. Everybody was.
And I'm like, don't be. I know entertainers, I guess, especially comedians and weird ones. I go, you know, you need go time for them to focus.
Yeah.
Away from it, we don't focus well.
Yeah,
go time, this microphone, I'm zoned in like Kevin Costner in that baseball movie.
For sure.
But anywhere else in life, I'm a little bit weird.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, too, when I'm performing every day, that, like, when I was in high school, I was off the wall and stuff, and I still occasionally get like that, but for the most part, I perform every night, so I'm like, you know, I save that energy.
I'm a
quieter person now, so that's what your mom was worried about, was I was there for a full night Thursday when everyone's training and getting together, and everyone's like, uh-oh, because, like, they're like, this guy's really quiet.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, all right, we got hundreds of kids coming in here, I was just like, boom, like, same
Turn
way
it
I would
on.
be with comedy, right?
I had no fears at all.
Yeah.
I told my mom, just chill out, and she talks a lot, so that's part of the problem there,
your
right?
mom's awesome.
She's pretty
Mom
awesome.
that talks a lot. Wow.
Lance, how are you, dude? How are you?
I'm good, man. I just saw you in Vegas. What was that?
About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
It's a blur, 2 weeks
I haven't
ago.
even recovered yet. That's an interesting shirt you're wearing. Our grass is greener, Canada. Where'd you get that shirt?
So I lost a bet with a Canadian friend, said I had to wear this for a day. And I'm like,
What was the
I
bet?
thought California had the best weed.
That's amazing.
It is to represent. You know, I had to.
Yeah.
I'm in your backyard, man.
Why are you here?
Stuff is clutch. I'm here for you. I mean, literally, I came. No, so I just shared the memo. You'll want to come up once a quarter and be live. You guys have so much fun, and although I do appreciate my little 20-minute niche there. Man, I had to hear some of the banter, and then you go ahead and invite a guy. We became BFFs over a Warhead.
Yeah.
Paul,
Candy out in the.
And this guy knows his marijuana.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
He's
you
a
guys,
smart cat.
it's almost like you knew I was coming.
Yeah.
So just catching up, see how things are going. You guys have been legal for a few months now, so I want to see. Well, about
Yeah,
a
since
month.
October 17th.
A month and a bit.
So
Yeah,
a month and a bit, yeah.
I'll tell you though, I'll be really honest about this. Since we've gone legal, like there was the big hurrah on the 17th, and people were partying and people carrying flags on the streets and stuff, and then I was just like people were honking. I was driving by honking horns and stuff. It was like we won, like it was like the country won the World Series. So it was really weird. But since then,
business as usual, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's right to point out, and I told my team we just had some. So part of the reason I should back out, I was in Minnesota for a few days. That's where our headquarters is. So I stopped by there for some leadership meetings, and we were talking about Canada. It's a big focus. You know, we've always been a fan. You guys, huge market for us. And that's why I said, I'm like, they're going through the same things we went through when I moved to Colorado for legalization, January 2014. Like, at first it's like all the rumored, the naysayer Armageddon things. It's going to be crazy, looting. There's going to be stoners in the street sleeping. I don't know what they were thinking they were going to do. But like none of that happened. Like there's all the craziness. We're out of stock, all the rest of it. A few people maybe have issues with pesticides or with mold or the little nuances of pushing product too fast. But then all of a sudden you're like, dude, it's not the end of the world. Matter of fact, we're getting more taxes to cover off on things like troubled youth and all these other topics that matter.
Exactly.
So it's cool.
the other thing though, and like people don't want to talk about this, so is people are still buying drugs from their drug dealers.
Oh, totally. Well, more so now. Since it legalized, that's spiked 910,000% easily because all of the dispensaries shut down. So now people are like, well, where do I get it?
I see. They're going back to dealers.
Right? And when
It's
you
an
think that
unfortunate
if a dealer can get you a quarter of marijuana for like $50 being expensive, there's people that can do it for $40, $50. And you go online, and right now on the OCS, it's like prices are super high, one, and people are complaining about mold and stuff like that. So people
Delivery
are like,
times.
you know what I mean? It's fair enough where you're like, so am I going to wait 2 weeks to get this from Canada Post that might be moldy, that might be expensive? Or do I go back to my brother's weird friend's basement and pick up a quarter for $50? You know what I mean? Like,
everybody's got one.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's a good. We saw that in California, so we didn't see that so much in
Okay.
Colorado in the markets that did. Oh, hey, we're open. Here's 1,000 dispensaries almost overnight. Like they did it right because to your point, it killed the black market. I mean, literally, everyone was like, "Oh, it's just as cheap, and I can go around the corner instead of some of the other things your weird, cousin's basement."
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But then to your point, California, we had this whole segue transitional period where same thing. They shut down all, we call them gray market, because it kind of, it was hedging on the medical market that was Prop 215 and it wasn't quite 64, but they started shutting all of them down in LA. And to your point, it's like, what do you do? I mean, this like prohibition all over again. It's like when all of a sudden they took away the alcohol, people still found the alcohol because they still want to consume it, you know? So,
yeah.
So, and I think, you know, what will happen is, especially there's good companies and there's bad companies.
Absolutely.
And the good companies are like anything are going to rise up. They're going to figure all this out. They're going to get the best product out there. And there's you know, a couple obviously I already know of, and you know, a couple that I can tell you already I think are a bit, you know, off and not right for what's going on.
Yeah.
But what will be interesting to me is when like say a year from now, when they really figure this out and start to introduce the edibles and start to introduce, you know, the infused drinks and everything and the oils and I think, you know, the government needs to figure that out sooner rather than later to take people away from going to their gray market, so to speak, because that's the whole point of this. And I'm sorry to say, I want controlled substances. Like I really do. And I don't want it being made in someone's bathtub. But I also don't want to get it with mold either, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
100%. When you're trying to fix an ailment and it's only enhancing it when you're consuming moldy product or pesticide or whatever composite they're finding, hard, heavy metals. I mean, and that's one thing I will give props. I mean, not everything's perfect with Health Canada, we know it, but not everything was perfect with California, with rules and regs and et cetera. But the one thing I do like is the level of testing they're doing. My gosh. I mean, that's one thing that the Cousin Basement also will never tell you, but like no heavy metals, no pesticides, no herbicides. Like I'm looking at what they're testing up here and I'm like, wow, this is impressive. Like this is getting green. Yeah. So.
Anyway, sorry, we had a call, and I was like, Bilal, pick it up. Just tell him to hold on. You just sit there. I'm trying not to get mad at Bilal, but Bilal's like, we got a call. I'm like, okay, but I'm in the middle of a conversation.
We're looking for lucky caller number 7.
I don't have 11 hands here to like, you know, do everything. Just pick it up.
You're
say,
the Swiss
hold on.
Army, Raj.
Yeah, exactly, right? Pick it up with my penis. Can you just like, does that make sense?
There, 4 minutes, 14 seconds in.
Everyone says I'm hard on Bilal, but literally just had a call, and Bilal's looking at the
You also constantly complain about me picking up the phone.
No, I don't. See, he would be the worst person to date in the world. When you come up with something, you get mad at it. It's just like, just say no problem.
Okay,
Todd.
we brought some flowers. So if you guys need a moment outside, evidently you can consume cannabis anywhere you can consume tobacco, as I understand.
Yeah,
in this
man.
province, which is wicked. That is just.
Man,
oh my gosh.
We got people like, you know, who are saying, should I just tell my, no, I don't want to tell my story on air. But I got people in like buddies who are traveling with it across Canada. Like, it's still a really interesting thing to do in the airplane. Like it's a really interesting new way of life.
You can travel with it, then
if you're flying Canada, like if you're doing a show in Winnipeg next week, you could go travel with it.
Oh, you could travel with anything you want across Canada. I'm not gonna get too deep into stories. Like, no, you can't. But like, trust me, I've opened my wallet up when I went to Vancouver from Toronto and gone, whoops.
Oh, no way.
Sick.
But I'll say they did ask. Well, and I know how difficult our Border Patrol has been. U.S. Customs has been with respect to Canadians traveling south. It's a little different coming north, obviously, but they did add a question to the survey. Not survey, but the questionnaire when I was crossing customs on if I had any
cannabis.
Or anyone in my party had cannabis.
Yeah, it's really interesting to ask that. And you see the signs now in the airport and stuff.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's still also weird. So weird in a good way, but it's just weird because I was like, you know, we've talked about this on the show before. We're of the generation if you even talked about weed in the airport, you feel like you'd get arrested.
Oh, yeah. That's up there with the B word.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's like, what?
Are there a lot of people traveling in the States and forgetting they got a joint in their pocket if they live and what's happening?
Absolutely. Nothing is really happening. So we did a story, gosh, I think there was one done when I was back at the cannabis, but we definitely did one at marijuana.com with respect to domestic travel in air, because that is something that is, you have the FAA that's tied into that. So it's interesting because up until recently, it wasn't really discussed. They removed cannabis at one point from the TSA's website, and knowing how this industry is, one of my reporters caught that, and that's where the story came from. Oh my God, they removed it, and then all of a sudden they retracted it. They went back and added it.
Right.
But it's interesting because LA did announce. I think we did just talk about that. This happened recently.
That you can leave there.
A month ago, they're like, you can leave with, well, they don't say an ounce, they say 28.5, but whatever. You can essentially travel with an ounce. And they're like, we will not stop you. We will not arrest you. We will not question you if you're of age or over and traveling with up to an ounce of cannabis. Where you go is your responsibility.
Yes.
So when I left Southern California and flew into Utah, that was something I was conscientious about because it's Utah.
So you
It's
didn't fly. You didn't leave with marijuana.
So I didn't. But
What
now
would
I am
happen?
comfortable.
Like hypothetically, if say I left Vegas when I left Vegas, and I had a layover in Houston, and say I had marijuana on me accidentally because I was still drunk from the night before and forgot about it, and say I landed in Houston and had
this
a layover.
is a crazy hypothetical.
Yeah.
Because
No,
we did hang out in Vegas.
So say that could have
Say my
happened.
buddy.
Yeah.
It was
And then say potentially if then I did have that on me, which I didn't, and then someone in Houston smelt it, what would happen?
Yeah, so that is something that has been brought up many times in questions. TSA is typically the primary when it comes to security with respect to the U.S. market and air travel. Having said that, it's a privatized organization that is not sworn in and badged per se compared to our local law enforcement.
Okay.
So what they would do is they would actually have to they'd file a report, they'd have to call in the local municipality for some. It's interesting. We had a guy who, and this is a great example, a guy we talked about on the show, the guy who is totally lit up on alcohol on my flight, beautiful flight home with the fam, coming from Seattle to LAX, and we had to land emergency landing in SFO because of this kook on the plane. But that's a good example of when he was ushered off the plane, it was actually SFPD. But we were down in Burlingame.
He was drinking too much?
Yeah, he got a little pissed on the plane, and then I don't know if he was bad talking. I think it's something that got into him with confrontation in the flight attendants, because anytime you are insubordinate to a flight attendant, all of a sudden that becomes a federal, not a state, right? Because it's FAA. So they had to file FBI reports. So we're sitting on the tarmac in SFO waiting. And I mean, we're like cheering to get this Yahoo off the plane.
Did they land at? Did they do an early? Where'd they land?
Yeah, we landed in SFO. We were on our way to LAX. They couldn't wait another
SFO?
45. Oh, San Francisco.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
They couldn't wait
Okay.
another 45 minutes for us to just land. I'm sorry, not even LAX, Burbank. So
Wow.
it's like,
and then they can pay for that too, eh? That's the other thing.
So they gave all of us $100 credit on that.
They get hit for that when they get arrested or whatever. They get hit for all
fined.
those extra fines for what it costs to play. Like it's in the tens of thousands.
I've seen that happen like 3 times over going to England.
Really?
Yeah, they go nuts in England because you're like you have a 10-hour flight and they're like, hold on, I'm a 2-drink limit.
It's not the Irish, it's the English. He is spot on. My
I've
Irish
literally
friends are
seen
pretty
that.
tame. The English, because that's my descent, are pretty crazy.
It is weird though when people lose it anywhere. Like
Yeah.
when people lose it. I was even at Tim Hortons today, and there was just a dude losing it in Tim Hortons, and
you're like,
it's kind. And like you listen, there's mental illness, and you always like worry a little bit that way. You're like, I hope that you just want to make sure these people are doing fine. But sometimes when they get aggressive, like literally this morning, I actually filmed some of it. The guy starts losing it, and then he was just grabbing people's like breakfast sandwiches and coffees and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do in those situations. I just stole a bunch of Timbits and left, like because they were all distracted. They were all distracted by I stole the donuts.
Especially when it's on the streetcar or the subway. Now you're like trapped in a box. You know.
Oh, I don't go in those. I'm too elitist.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's
Yeah.
true elitist. It's not a minimalist.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I
So
read
anyways,
this. Yeah.
I think you'd be fine. So going back, really, you would be fine. They wouldn't. I accidentally traveled before, and
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
like I opened my bag and I was like, because I was grabbing my keys on my bag, and I literally forgot about several grams of samples that I had gotten from an event, and I was like, oh, zip that back up. But
But
I
once
haven't
you're
heard of
through,
anyone
you're
getting
through.
arrested.
Once you're through.
Once you're through, you're through. When you get in on the other side, and especially when you're connecting, to your point, there's
Yeah.
and when someone, I hate to say it, but in the States, and even the most conservative states, let's say Alabama or Texas or Tennessee, people know cannabis, and they're not. I mean, it's a victimless crime to a certain extent. I mean, it's not. You smell like weed. And for all I know, he could smell like it because he smoked it before he came to the airport, not because he has it in his pocket.
Oh, I thought you were saying right now. No, it's like
no.
guilty as charged. I most definitely did.
So hypothetically, then I didn't need to hypothetically go to their washroom, empty out my pockets, and flush it down the toilet. Hypothetically,
But coming into Canada, I'd be concerned because I'd hate for you not to be able to come back, because we've got good things going on in LA.
Yeah.
2019 that I have in the works. I don't know if I.
but
told you
Canada,
about
you're
them,
allowed.
but-
Like that's the thing. What if I had it coming in Canada? Like, yo, it's legal here. Well, like that's what I understand.
Well, that's
So
what I
maybe,
thought about.
yeah.
That's what I thought. I'm like, but evidently that doesn't apply when they're asking me if I'm traveling with it, because that's how it is in the States. If California says it's legal and I fly into Washington or Oregon, the first thing I do is dispute it. If someone is like, wait, don't leave the airport that you just landed in because you smell like, I'd be like,
Well, it's also unclaimed
legal, it's
live
legal.
goods, right? So I mean, you would essentially get in trouble taking apples from LA to Canada.
That's
and not
very
letting them
Oh,
know,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
and on that point, I'll admit I forgot about a banana in my backpack. this morning.
Oh, I smoke a banana every day, little man. Hey, Paulie.
You kept calling Chiquita. I'm
yeah.
like, who's this Chiquita you keep referencing?
That's a dick joke, people. Okay. So what's this hemp bill that I keep hearing is going to pass next week?
So that's a big deal because it's the farm
In the
bill,
States, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the States. So it's the farm bill that essentially doesn't allow hemp just to be lumped up in with cannabis. So obviously cannabis sativa. So we've talked about this before. Your marijuana, as most people's slang term, is cannabis sativa, and then cannabis sativa L is essentially the hemp iteration thereof. So it has 0.03 or less of THC in it, right? So that's what the hemp bill is in reference to. But I was just talking about, hanging out with my boy Weedstagram over here up in Toronto, and that's what we were talking about.
Is that his Instagram account?
That is.
That's
true.
416.
416.
That's
Nice.
cool, man.
So,
yeah, this guy
he's
looks
kinda-
wrecked.
Yeah,
I like this guy.
Every day, bro.
Yeah, I like this guy. You look cool, man. You look like a nice guy.
Not only do I smoke it, but I grow it. That's
This guy's like, it's like hanging out with John C. Riley, this guy. He's just like a good dude. You get that ever? Yeah. What do you got, Flo? Oh, you want to talk to him?
So-
Yeah, we'll talk to him after.
Yeah. So, but just having that conversation, and I said, it's a good example is Kentucky, which is one of those, we call them flyover states. You guys, I think, call them middle states. But Kentucky, their cash crop was tobacco, and that has since subsided because tobacco is now an export cash crop to us, not a domestic cash crop. Well, they've transferred all of those crops over to hemp. So all of a sudden, Kentucky's got a new cash crop. And so that's where we talked about this before, too. That's why this is a nonpartisan topic, because it benefits the Democrats, the Republicans, and everything in between, right?
Yeah.
So that's because that's very much
When
a red
anytime
state.
farmers are making money, they're usually much more conservative, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
I mean, we
Very
want
true.
people to make money. I mean,
Yeah.
I really believe that people, in this day and age where the economy is really tight, and it's tough right now, and I fear, I was talking about it yesterday, I fear a bit of a recession coming again.
Oh,
but
man.
Totally.
Real estate's at a tipping point. I mean, for both countries.
for both
North America,
countries, and
we're
people
both in a crazy
people
place.
are over leveraged. But honestly, thank God for the cannabis space. The amount of job creation that if
So
we
many.
didn't have that space, we might already be there. I really believe that.
Yeah.
No, and I think the states that have passed it, and that's I was just talking to a reporter. She comes from another industry. She knew of my media background in this industry. So I'm like, I've been open book. Anything you have to. She's like, there's so much to catch up. But that's what she's asking about. She's like, what is the difference? It's state to state. It's country to country. I'm like, well, some states they pass because of the advocacy they have in that state, right? Like Canada very much had passionate people that said this is making a difference from a medical standpoint. It's a great exit drug for opioids. It's a good alternative for epileptic seizures and for post-cancer survivor, all this stuff, right? But there's some states that actually pass without a large advocacy. But where the advocacy wasn't so strong was where the financial gain was strong.
Yeah, how
right?
many
So that
states is it
political angle.
passed in now?
So we're over 40 states.
Over 40 states.
So a
the
lot of
ones
people
that
don't
aren't
recognize
passed, can me and Todd guess them? Do you know them?
Oh, that's a great. Here, let's try. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh man, this sounds like a good game.
Oh yeah. Okay, so Alabama,
Yes, correct.
not passed, right?
Not passed.
Okay, Texas.
No, it is some in some form.
Texas is CBD. They have
Yes,
three
it's great.
dispensaries for CBD.
Nice. I used
Only
to live
for
in
medical
Texas
patients.
too.
That's a good. No,
I rep
very
that.
red though. I get where you're
Yeah.
going.
I like
Okay.
it. I lived in San Antonio though, so it's different.
You live in San Antonio. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How long did you live there for?
For 3 years when I was grade 1 to 3.
Really? Did you
Yeah.
shoot some guns down there at that age?
No, but that's where I learned to read, so I came back with an accent. It took
I was
me a
gonna
long
say,
time to
that's
not
right.
have an accent and not say can and ham and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you like the Spurs?
I love the Spurs. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Raptors fan, but you know.
Well, now
I
you got
love the
both from
Spurs.
Kawhi and DeMar. You can
I'm
love them
happy
both.
that Kawhi's here. Yeah. But I think Popovich is the best coach of all time.
Oh,
so
he is
that's
the best.
cool to see
yeah.
DeMar there.
He's like America's
This is
dad.
the best tangent ever.
yeah.
This is
Sorry, yeah, we go off on tangents.
Utah
Yeah.
too. Utah definitely right.
No.
Utah just passed with Prop 2. So that'd be fun.
did.
They literally just November. Yeah, they just passed it.
Wow.
Very
Florida?
aggressive. I thought they'd be one of the last.
No,
Florida
Florida's
did pass.
huge.
Yeah,
Florida
Florida
passed
is
it.
medical.
Medical, yeah.
Yes.
But the Gillum was running on it, but he didn't win. Well, I know Michigan just passed,
Yes.
What about New York?
Yes, New York does have medical.
but they're not. Yeah, they're only medical.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Think of the South.
Yeah.
South, so Kentucky.
So you got Kentucky. That's the
I already
top
got
South.
Kentucky, Mississippi.
Mississippi's another one.
Mississippi, Tennessee,
Tennessee's another
Yeah,
one.
it's all there.
They're close.
Okay.
Tennessee's close, but they're not.
Kansas.
Kansas is another one.
Okay.
You can even go
Who
further
they,
south.
they need to. allow people in Kansas to smoke weed. There's nothing else to do there, man. Like, that's
big time.
ridiculous.
Our claim to fame is being literally in the middle of our country.
Yeah.
That's about it.
No, wasn't Dorothy from there?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
Dorothy's from Kansas.
They're like,
She didn't even click her heels, or she didn't want to. I don't think she wanted to go home, dude.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
no
that
place
whole
like
movie looks like you've been smoking weed. They should just bring that to life.
So there's
Yeah.
a tangent for you. Have you ever heard? Did it make it to Canada about how
it matches up perfectly
yes,
with
to the dark
With the wall?
side?
For
Oh
sure.
my gosh, the wall.
With the wall.
Yeah,
of course.
Dark Side of Oz.
Dude, Dark Side
no,
of
with
Oz.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Dark side,
Yeah,
dark side of the
yeah.
moon. Dark side of the moon.
And
Dark Side
does
of Oz.
it ever?
Spot on.
Spot on.
Big time.
So
I'm gonna
Big
do that this weekend
time.
with my kid.
you'll never know. I mean, some of this
Awesome.
stuff. I'm like, gosh, why do you think I was so sad yesterday when I found out that the creator of SpongeBob SquarePants passed away? I'm like, that was the one cartoon that I could really get into when I was
That
medicated,
cartoon
you
was
know?
massive. I think
Yeah.
that I was thinking about it the other day. It's like that's like there's such a huge generation that likes it, and it's because
insane.
for me when SpongeBob came out, I was like 14, 15. So my generation likes SpongeBob because it's when we first started smoking weed. So we would like get high after school, and then we'd be like, "What is this show?" And we'd watch it, and we liked it because it's fun to be high and watch SpongeBob. But then everybody younger than us also likes it because it's a kids show. So there's a generation of like 20 to 30 years that love SpongeBob.
100%. It's not something that came back.
When
It's always
dads
been
loved
cool.
it, right? And that's what
Yeah.
you're getting at,
Right.
Lance, because there was that. I mean, I was just missed it. So I was too old to be that like dumb kid that you were.
Yeah, that we were like.
Let me
SpongeBob's
point out our
Trinity.
generation. I'll venture to guess. You and I, we'd come home and it was high school. We'd come
You
home.
guys turned on the
and we'd
radio,
watch
Howdy Doody.
Oh
No, or am I?
for fuck's
no.
sakes. Listen to this. 'Cause it's a joke.
Were you
It's a
guys
Howdy
like
Doody
just
show.
Three Stooges?
Beavis and Butthead, dude. It was Beavis and Butthead that we were sitting around on a couch watching.
That's like the coolest.
So Cornholio. TV for my bunghole.
Cornholio, my bunghole.
But that didn't have the stay power to your point. It wasn't a multi-generational item.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch Beavis and Butthead.
No.
4-year-olds
It was pretty-
couldn't watch this shit.
Then South Park came along and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, man.
frickin'
No,
South
I
Park.
watched. You know what I would watch back in the '80s, man? It was the best. I don't know why. For some reason, at 4 o'clock and at 5 o'clock before the news, they would have Magnum PI would play.
Oh,
like
classic.
old Magnums.
Dude.
And I would watch. And Magnum was a great show.
Do you still think hairy chests are cool, though, is the question.
Oh,
I mean,
dude,
he really,
that's
that
what I
is
pleasure
that
myself
Tom
to.
Selleck.
Oh, that was Tom Selleck.
That was Tom Selleck.
Selleck in
He
his
put the
prime.
hairy-
Him and Burt Reynolds made the hairy chest epic.
Nice.
In the,
Bert's
in the
dead,
80s.
eh? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't
Hugh
believe
Hefner,
Bert's dead. Yo,
Stan Lee, not to
Stan-
be a comic book
Yeah.
geek, but as
Yeah.
a total comic book
Stan
geek.
Lee's
I saw my
dead.
collection. That
Stan
was
Lee.
Yeah, it's weird when people die.
yeah. And these are
But
some
it
legends
happens.
that makes it does happen.
You
If
know?
they smoke cannabis, no.
But I mean,
But-
when you're old, it's
It
better
happens.
that than
You know what's funny? You know, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. Lance Lambert said, "Do we got to call Dylan McDermott soon? You know this actor. Do you guys want to hang out? You
Yeah,
want to hang out?
yeah.
Dylan? Yeah, hang out. No rush. Whatever. We'll all do it together. Ask any questions for Dylan. He's promoting a movie called The Clove Hitch Killer. But I
Sounds
was
kinda Irish.
What's in? Yeah, it's more like small town, like
Oh, okay.
like dad, and he's a killer. I think he is anyway. But the
synopsis.
what's interesting to me still also with back to Boveda and Boveda Inc. and the marijuana stuff going on and the big MJ BizCon that was in Vegas when I was hanging out with Lance and a bunch of different people. Obviously, it is interesting seeing like 70-year-old like you're talking about old people. Like all these old dudes now carrying their vape pens and it's so, and they're actually like kind of chilled out older dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Like guys who are more from the finance world than you would have thought were like douchebags. I call like the Brian Burke types in Canada. Brian
Yep,
Burke.
I know, yeah.
Who you're almost intimidated by, and they're just like goofy old dudes now, like enjoying their money, I guess, but enjoying their vape.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's nice to see them a little more accepting. Hanging out with me wearing a ball cap. They might have ignored me in the past doing that.
Well, I think we discussed it too. So I mean, both of you and I are right there in age, but something happens when you hit 30. Something happens when you hit 40. When I hit 40, like all of a sudden, like I got a hangover from like 3 beers the other week, man. And I'm like, this is why I stopped drinking.
Yeah, I may or may not have been in bed all day because of last night. Another hypothetical.
The Todd Shapiro Show.
You are the greatest hero in American history.
SiriusXM Canada Laughs Ch.168.